Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Wings Podcast. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri. On today's show, we will meet Rajas Pathak, a cybersecurity professional who runs his own boutique firm offering IT security services. He is a visiting faculty at Pune University on this subject and spreads cybersecurity awareness on different platforms. I am also a teacher, learner, biker, health nut, foodie, outdoor enthusiast, and a bird watcher, Rajas proudly says. Welcome, Rajas, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Uh, I'm glad to be here on this Wings podcast, and I'm very thankful to you that you invited me for this interactive session.
Rajas, you are the first guest on this show who is a expert and a professional on the subject of cybersecurity, something which I believe is a part of everyday life for all of us, not just people who kind of dabble in technology, but people who consume and use technology, ordinary people like me or anybody else. Somehow, uh, you know, uh, technology, I believe, has become so pervasive in human life. And, I believe thanks to COVID, when everybody was locked indoors, the only way we could engage with each other and the whole world and live our life is through digital mediums. So somehow, that experience has only accelerated this whole move towards living a digital life. And of course, tremendous advantages, no doubt about it. For example, this very conversation that you and I are having right now is thanks to technology, over a Zoom call. But then there are these downsides and there are these threats, and that's, I believe, the world that you live in. So why don't you throw some light on what is this world of cybersecurity? What are the threats and what happens there? Because we as users are kind of blind to what happens behind the curtains. So can you lift the curtains for us?
Yeah, so as you correctly mentioned, that not only the previous times, but also since this COVID pandemic, we started, depending a lot on technology. We are dependent on it and we are making ourselves more and more dependent on it as the days pass on. New types of technologies come. We are able to enjoy them. We are able to utilize them on various platforms, or while we walk on the steps of developing technology to its new version or the upgraded versions. There are risks, there can be threats, there can be what anomalies, or there can be individuals or group of individuals having some negative thought process towards destroying this technology or utilizing this technology in a bad way or in a negative way or whatever. So what I see is there is an action and then there is a reaction. So action is what that we have developed that different types of technology in different ways, and the reaction is some smart, intelligent, but some human minds which like who are having kind of a negative thought towards it are making this digital life of all of us little scary, little with some fear or with some a thought in the mind that I may get hacked. There can be a cyber threat lurking around somewhere in my digital well-being or my digital footprints all over the digital space or whatever. Or we have taken this action as human beings. Definitely there is a reaction from this cyber world that there are going to be threats, there are going to be vulnerabilities, there are going to be risks which we may know or we may not know or we may tend to ignore. I have seen many people ignoring those risks and then getting what defrauded or inside that risky kind of a what a radar of risk, what we can say. So this is what I see. Yes, I had a passion to not only develop a career but see this from different angles so that I can have my own role to play in this. I can teach someone, I can give something back to the society, what is happening and what you should do, what you should not do, something like that.
No, what you say is right, Rajas, because whilst there's this accelerated or hyper pace towards going digital, in every aspect of one's life, be it education, be it business, be it entertainment, be it travel, where the apps on my phone simply is my gateway to the world. And of course, I'm assuming that in all this, my economic and emotional safety is protected. And of course, over the years, there's a lot of awareness that has been created. I think Reserve Bank of India, for example, thanks to the Amitabh Bachchan ads that we see on television, it talks about being careful. Even various the banks that I have my accounts with, they send me periodic emails about this thing called anti-phishing and those kind of stuff. So beware of spam mails and all kinds of stuff. So I think in by and large, in many ways, we are reasonably kind of well aware of the possible threats. But then you as a cop in the cyber world, what is it that you deal with? Who are the con men or the defrauders whom you deal with? And if you can take probably a simple few everyday examples that could kind of help us understand the nature of work that you do.
There is an interesting incident that happened in late 2020. There is a financial service provider company. Their CEO gave me a distress call saying that there were around 8 to 9 lakh rupees that were debited from his savings account, which was not at all connected to his business. It was an independent digital entity or digital asset, what we can say. That account was never connected to his what his corporate life at all. But then the distress call was about his savings account getting breached, and a large portion of money was transferred to a different account. I was just invited for conducting an investigation. What would have happened? What was the root cause of this particular thing? First thing I noticed that this person was not at all aware and not at all interested in knowing anything about information security. My first question to that person was if he or his organization or people working in his organization knew what kind of information technology are you using or were they using in those days or in those times when this fraud took place. They certainly had absolutely no idea what kind of IT infrastructure that they had. So when we came into the picture, we had to understand how many computers they were having, what kind of different internet connections that they were having, how many servers that they were having, what kind of internal facing and external facing IT infrastructure that they had, how many of their IT assets were accessible from unprotected internet from the outside, how many of their digital assets were accessible only from their inside or their internal IT infrastructure. So while studying their organization or while studying them as a corporate entity or business entity, first thing that we noticed that they had hardly any awareness about cyber crimes, cyber security. They were least bothered or certainly not interested getting or protecting their organization from the technical perspective. Of course, they had different documentations and policies or legal documents, but those things were only documented. They were not practically implemented. So that is what we first understood. Secondly, we understood that this person was having so many unwanted apps in his phone, and many of his employees were also having unwanted apps that would steal the data from their phone or from their internal from anywhere from their internal IT infra. And some of their employees and also the CEO had received some intimations from their mobile service provider that an SIM or the virtual SIM, what we can say, was created with the help of CEO's personal information. For an example, the CEO had lost some of his the chunks of his personal information, such as his PAN or his Aadhaar or his address proof or his photo, and somewhere in Mumbai region, very well known mobile service provider's office, this person's information was shared, and an eSIM card was procured by the name of this particular person. Now, how an eSIM card operates? eSIM card is not a physical SIM that we insert into our phone, but a few phones that are available in the market are able to do accept SIM card in virtual form, so that the physical SIM card is not there in the phone, but then the mobile number is installed in the phone, or the mobile number is activated in that particular phone, and the person starts receiving the calls on behalf of the original owner of the mobile number. The person also starts receiving the OTPs or SMSs. So it was very easy to dupe this person. Once this person's savings bank account details were stolen and an eSIM card was issued to the cyber criminal by the name of this person, I think it was just the matter of a few seconds to receive the OTP, commit a cyber crime by transferring a large amount of money to the criminal's account.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there is this beautiful movie on Netflix. I don't know whether it's still around, but it used to be there a couple of months back called Jamtara. I saw that, and this is a simple schemes that these scamsters have, maybe using the eSIM methodology, where probably they are defrauding people who are both unaware and not so competent to deal with such threats. So, at one end of the spectrum, we can talk of a set of people who are ignorant and relatively less competent to understand the gravity of the possible digital attack or threat. But then at the other end of the spectrum, there would also be people and companies and organizations, I would like to believe, Rajas, who are reasonably aware and reasonably competent about the possibility of these threats and attacks. For example, I mean, we know of large banks getting hacked, a whole lot of personal information of a lot of people going away. Airlines are hacked with credit card information that they store on behalf of a lot of their customers. There was this huge shipping line in Europe a couple of years back who was hacked, and a couple of 100 million accounts of data was missed, and the whole shipping line came to a standstill. So I think this is a very, very complex world, right? I mean, I'm recalled of a movie called Catch Me If You Can, starring Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Where Tom Hanks plays an FBI agent who is trying to catch this con man all his life.
Yeah.
And in this hide and seek game, somehow the con man also enjoys cheating the cop, not for the sake of cheating, but the fact that I can win. And he says, catch me if you can. So I don't know, in the cyber world, this attack and defense game that gets played by experts like you, is there a catch me if you can that gets played there?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Jamtara thing that you said earlier. Jamtara is one side of committing the cyber crimes, which is still not hacking, but the other way around, as you gave certain examples about the shipping company or large banks or large corporations, even after having heavy amount of information security built into their IT infra and the entire business, still they get hacked, still their security gets breached. They face loss of data. Jamtara is still not a hack. It is just a social engineering attempt to someone who doesn't understand what is an OTP, who doesn't understand what is AnyDesk remote access software, who doesn't understand if your bank or if MSCB or if any other government or private entity will directly give you a call to ask some personal information about you, or ask you to transfer some amount of money or win a bet or invest in some unknown app and get your money double or triple or whatever. People still don't understand these things, and that's why a lot of awareness to be put into the play. Second thing about the catch me if you can thing. So there are attackers and there are defenders. Everyone who begins or the career into cybersecurity. First of all, there is a lot of fascination about attacks, and slowly the person starts looking at the good side of the same thing, and then the person becomes from the defender's side. There are so many people who are from the both sides. They are attackers also and they are defenders also. I come from earlier. I won't say that I was an attacker, but I was more of a defender. So I studied all these things from a defensive way or defensive technologies. I professionally hack, or I sometimes have professionally conduct different types of cyber attacks on organizations. Of course, when I have a permission from them, only then I do it. But yes, there is this huge amount of catch me if you can kind of a game between the attackers and defenders.
No, I mean, this is of course
And
this is a huge complex world, and I'm sure just as There are, the desire to attack and defraud, which is a timeless human emotion. Doesn't matter whether software or hardware existed or not. To cheat has always been a human emotion, for whatever reason. And of course, to not get trapped and to secure oneself is the other side. So attack and defense obviously has been a timeless game that humankind can talk about. And of course, underlying all this, there are these elements of fear and greed that gets played out. So somehow, you can have various perspectives, I believe, to this whole thing. That, for example, when a call comes saying that I'm an LIC agent and your policy is getting mature and blah blah blah, and share this information, I think one has to kind of keep the antennas up. So I don't know, somehow, at least for me, the principle that I follow, at least to secure myself in terms of financial threats or threats to my personal information, is either not to trust unless proven otherwise, or trust but verify the trust.
As you correctly mentioned, there is either less trust or there is trust with lots of verification. So beyond that, there is another thing that is launched or that is implemented by different companies within their IT infrastructure, which is known as zero trust. There is absolutely no trust on each other, on any other system. It is considered that the other person is a potential threat to this company, a potential cyber criminal, or a potential risk factor for this particular IT infra. Considering there is going to be no trust on anything, anyone, and any kind of access, any kind of activity, any kind of technology implementation that is there for an organization.
No, undoubtedly. I mean, this is an extremely rich subject for anybody to kind of get into. And you're right. I mean, given that access to information is from any source, from any kind of hardware, using any kind of software, on any kind of network. It could be a private secured network, or it could be an open public network like a mobile phone network, etc. Obviously, the custodians of information, let's say banks or insurance companies, or wherever my data resides and whose services I need, they need to protect themselves in my benefit. So yeah, I think we live in exciting times, and I think I feel that we need to have a hope that somehow in the long run the good will prevail over the evil, irrespective of the war, that eventually the Ravan will be destroyed by Ram. That's how mythology has taught us, and all the films that get made, that no matter what, in a 2 hour or 2.5 hour movie, most of the time the villain is winning. With the last 10-15 minutes, somehow the hero kind of overpowers and overcomes, and eventually that's the winning side.
I was talking to certain parents that stay in our housing society. Every year we celebrate Ganesh Utsav for say 7 to 8 days at a stretch. So there are different types of interactive programs and skits and competitions that are held in our society, and it's a good activity, what we can say. 8 to 10 days, everyone in the society comes down, meets, greets each other, watches the Ganesh Utsav programs together. So it's a good thing that happens every year in our society. For last 2 years, it didn't happen. So this year there is a different excitement, more excitement this Ganesh Utsava in our society. I was talking to a certain parents in our housing society, and they said a very peculiar and particular thing, that since last 2 years their children have not been able to cope up with their studies, partially do something, but not to the fullest. There are these emotions, there are these feelings and thoughts that are in their minds, but they are not able to channelize them well. So, will you do something? Will you introduce some activity, or will you get them involved in some kind of an activity which will channelize their thought, or which will channelize their emotion in a positive and good way? I said okay. At the beginning, I was also scratching my head I was gonna deal with this particular thing. But then ultimately, what I thought is, if I could, ask these children to to join me to what plan for or to develop a skit, or to plan for a skit, or a plan for an interactive play for this particular Ganeshotsava. I thought it was a very good and positive idea. I spoke to a certain children in our society which come from different backgrounds in terms of studies and family backgrounds or whatever, different types of career lines that they would like to do. But then everyone had a thought that yes, we should do something about cybercrime and cybersecurity. It's a very good subject. It's a very good, interesting topic. Of course, we are interested in developing a skit, developing a play for our society members for this Ganeshotsava. And then we, as this idea clicked, and there was this crux behind all this, it just clicked in such a way that we have already started practicing now. There are eight to nine subjects that we have jotted down, eight to nine different types of cyber crimes, how they take place, what exactly happens at the background and foreground, how it is done, and what is the lesson to learn from that particular cyber crime. So this is the thought behind putting developing this skit or developing this play. And there are around 8 to 9 skits into that, and we have already decided and developed six of them, and only three are left now.
Wonderful,
So
wonderful.
uh,
What a
it's a good
wonderful,
activity.
what a wonderful idea that you are kind of taking this passion and interest of yours in the subject of cyber security and creating 6 to 8 small short plays in the forthcoming Ganeshotsav, which is such a beautiful idea. So Rajas,
Yeah.
at this beautiful juncture in your life, what is it that you're looking forward to yourself? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? What are your hopes from your future?
At the moment, I'm focusing a lot on my career. It's going ahead. I feel good. I'm exactly able to do what I want to do, and get a good night's sleep, and be calm, and be calm, and have a peaceful days or peaceful nights, or whatever. A specific thought comes to my mind when I look at how my future is going to be. As I come from, or my career teaches me, about the threats or risks about technology and whatnot. Whatever I would like to do in my future, it will be something that will not have a lots of dependency on technology. That is for sure. I would like to spend some time, devote some time for some kind of a social activity. I have not found out what exactly I would do or I would like to do, but I would like to devote myself to some kind of a social activity. My passion or my hobbies are something like going out for a bike ride, going into the nature, get the feel, get the flavor of the nature, spend more time into the valleys or into the nature, spend some time discovering wildlife, spend some time doing bird watching. So I see I have different types of likings which relate to different areas. There is at times I'm passionate about food. At some other time, I feel like going out for a ride. I feel like going out for a bicycle ride with my group. The typical crowded world that we are living in today. What I feel is I'm kind of a moody person at that particular point of time. What would come into my mind is something I don't know, and that's why when I give a thought, the thing like what is gonna my future be like, I sometimes keep on scratching my head, boss, what is gonna be my future.
So
So sometimes I get confused, but definitely it will be something different and something not away from the technology.
no, this question, what is your dream and hope for a future, does elicit different kind of responses. Some of them are very, very clear. What is it that they want to do? Where do they see themselves at 3 years or 5 years down the line? And there's an absolute clarity there. And on the other end, I have heard several responses saying that I have no clue what my future is. All I want to do is I want to explore and experiment. What I know for sure is I won't be the same person tomorrow that I am today. I will change, I will evolve, thanks to the
Yeah.
exploration and experimentation. So I think I wish you, that kind of approach, if that kind of, evokes you or draws your energy, to probably discover various parts of Rajas, not just the cybersecurity aspect, but then you spoke about being a health nut, you spoke about being a foodie, a biker, a bird watcher, and I'm sure there are so many things in the world. Is such a beautiful place for one to explore whatever one needs. So wish you all the exploration and experimentations in life, Rajas. And this has been a beautiful and a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much for your time. And as we end this conversation, let me quickly ask you, what do you feel? What are you saying to yourself right now?
I'm very thankful that I was a part of this conversation with you. But definitely, I would like to have such conversations with you, not only on this podcast but offline as well.
Of
And
course.
on behalf of all the individuals who featured into the earlier podcasts, we all would like to celebrate Wings podcast show today, because the effort that you have been putting into the thought that is there behind doing this is something that is different. If you say that you would like to celebrate the normal people or normal individuals like us who are doing different things in life, there is a mutual feeling. Definitely we would also like to celebrate Wings podcast some or the other day. We would
Thank
also
you.
like to know you. We would also like to understand how has been your journey.
No, sure. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for saying such a thing. It means such a lot to both me and Asha. And what I promise to you is, yes, this conversation that we have will continue. And maybe next time we meet, it could be a little chai pe, I won't say charcha,
Chai pe charcha.
but a good moments over a cup of tea or a coffee somewhere. So look forward to meeting you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75 at gmail.com. Thank you.